say personnel and software.
I'll be here for the other two.
I you put the mission data in your sponsors so we do that word so we can
Been in one newspaper.
Steve Waldman, I work for the FCC on local news and do consulting for local news sites, and then also recently launched a Brooklyn Nets website in Brooklyn.
So are you competing with the Brooklyn game?
We are.
You are the Brooklyn game.
That's a good way.
Good for you.
We bought them. No, we have always.
That's fantastic. Great stuff.
I'm Bill Smith from Evanston now, just up the road here. I've been doing it for 7 years now. Moderately successful. Enjoying a lot of
Non-profit, for-profit.
Oh, for-profit.
For-profit. Sir, your name, your site, non-profit, for-profit. Joe.
Okay. I'm Joe Hyde. I'm from Texas. Got local news when I owned it. I started an internet service provider. Discovered we had more internet service provider customers than newspaper subscribers. And, long story short, we sold it. I went to work for the Dallas Morning News for a while. And the last 3 years we've been doing web development, a big web development firm in Central Texas. And we decided to relaunch the local thing, local, hyper-local market, because I feel like now is the time. So we launched our site. It's San Angelo Live. We launched it on September 4th. And this month we've had 100,000 uniques.
Non-profit, for-profit.
Who does anything for no money?
You're about to find out. You're about to find out, right?
Rick O'Connor, I publish a blog about Roosevelt Island in New York City. It's one property.
Good. Anybody else?
Name? Steve Stars. I'm a Citizens Call, which is a small news site outside of Philadelphia. So,
Non-profit, for-profit. For-profit.
maybe we should create a position.
Scott Brodbeck, ARL.com, Virginia, and Fresno.com, Fresno.
I'm Brian Wheeler with Charlottesville tomorrow. In Central Virginia, we're a nonprofit.
And I'm Uriah Kiser with Potomac Local News in Pennsylvania County, Northern Virginia. We are a for-profit. So we're all here to find, to talk about different revenue sources, things like that. I guess depending upon where you are in your business, how many people have any idea of what their rate card looks like, or has a rate card? Okay. How many people are thinking about making a rate card and learning more about what a rate card is? Okay.
Making a better one.
Making a better one. How many people have absolutely no clue that you've seen a rate card? And Brian and Scott jumped in. I'll start here. We just roll with it. But once you like any business plan, your rate card. Obviously, you know what it is. Obviously, the rate card is what you charge for advertising, what you charge for your services, whether it be display, banner ads, sponsored posts, a table at a job fair event, whatever that revenue stream is, and you set it out, and that's what you typically use to do your marketing. It changes. Ours changes all the time in terms of from year to year. We update our rates. We charge more. We charge less. So like any business plan, it's sort of a living document. You might go back to it, frequently to make sure that it's still serving your business needs. You guys want to talk about how you guys set your rate card, or and especially you, because you obviously have, I'm sure you're nonprofit angle.
Why don't you do it with a for-profit?
Yeah.
Right. So when I first created my rate card, I sort of guessed what would be a price that people would pay. Since then, it's just sort of been supply and demand. I've tried to, at first the rates were way too complicated, and I simplified them down, tried to make nice round even numbers. So one thing I did was, I do flat rate by time. So, it's based on a monthly rate, and, gave it to people on weekly. And so I just consider the week to be a fourth of a month. The ability to break that down is important, because otherwise you're going to do that out of time. The more you confuse them, the less likely they are to buy. And so I set the rates starting out, then I simplified the rates, and then over time, as we have sold out ad positions, I have raised rates. And raised to the point where we have working, the advertising is right on the brim right now, and so I kind of like where they are, but another rate increase might be coming if the positions start selling out.
And so you use a flat rate. So if I want to buy an ad for a month and be seen by every viewer every time, there's one price that I pay for that.
Yeah. So it's one price depending on the number of ad positions, and it's just one price for everybody.
Higher up on the page, the more I pay.
So not necessarily, because on our homepage we do something a little bit akin to what Howard does in terms of we have a big stack of ads on the sidebar of the homepage. It does rotate up and down, and it's one price for all. And I feel like you can create more inventory that way and still get ads seen. And then you have two engagement acquisitions.
And so we, just in a snapshot of the for-profit, when we hit 100,000 page views per month, we went from the flat rate to a CPM base. And so what we sell an inventory, we have an average 150,000 page views or impressions per month. And an advertiser can buy as many or as few as those impressions that they want. And we charge by the thousand. We charge $10 open rate, or we charge $8 on the end of the contract. So $8 per thousand, 20,000 impressions, and that's $150 a month.
And we also offer a progressive discount based on whether we advertising for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. The goal of hopefully getting you on long-term contracts, because that's a lot of
But I just had a quick question. You said you do $10 per thousand. Do you have a minimum ad buy?
Well, yeah, it would be 20,000.
20,000?
Yeah, we do 20. I mean, I don't let people do little, because we're not really getting the value out of it.
Yeah.
And you buy anything lower than 20,000, and it's, I don't ever see my ad. How come I never see my ad on here?
Right.
And so you have to, so doing CPM is a little more educating. It's not. I just don't take the money. I kind of, like any good sales
at some point we have to teach them something, right?
You have to educate, absolutely.
Well, I kind of like jump in there. One reason we wouldn't start out with flat rate, now we do have some CPM positions now, premium positions. So I've been involved in selling ad sales for newspapers before, supervising ad sales people, and going to help sell an ad, and it would be very hard to explain random rotation to a small business owner. And then if they did buy, we get with so many calls, I can't see my ad. And it's going to show up 1 of 4 times. Well, I just loaded my ad. Reloaded 10 times and I don't see my ad. And that's the nature of randomness. And so, if you run and understand statistics, you'll understand why that works. But if you don't, then you're not. And a lot of these small business people aren't. They didn't take statistics in college. So, what I decided to do, the reason we went with flat rate, every page on the homepage is, and I think this applies to any small publisher, you're coming in, they don't necessarily know you, they don't know your product, they don't know, they're not sure about this internet stuff, because maybe they haven't done it before. So there's all these barriers already in place. I wanted to take the actual ad buy and make it as simple as possible. and so that I can go in there, introduce myself, introduce what we're doing and why it matters to them, and then say, you know, sign up for 3 months and here's your rate.
So you don't have any hidden ads?
What's that?
You don't have any hidden ads?
No.
How much
Everything's
do
on
you
the
charge
page.
for that?
We range from $50 a month to $400 a month.
So you're giving someone a static ad for $50 a month, is it on every page?
Yep.
And so you're, I mean, that's where I get to, if you have 150 page impressions and you're selling for $10 per impression,
Per thousand.
I'm sorry, $10 per thousand, that's 150 times 10, which is only $1,050. So how are you paying for reporters and how are you putting food on the table?
Basically, we have multiple different positions that we can fill. So because we have that inventory, we can spot several different. And so where Howard's got one ad unit and then static is the same.
But he's got 150 of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Howard's making up on volume, and I bow down to him. He's the man. But you know, I can slot 4 advertisers in the same spot that a static ad, 4 or 5, really as many as inventory as I have.
Part of our ad model goes back to something that a real smart guy used to run San Francisco Gate called named Bob Cawthorn. And I saw him speak in 2002. And he was a big believer in every advertiser should be able to afford to buy your website, because the small advertisers eventually become big advertisers. So that's why we have, say, a $50 acquisition. And why, you know, as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm running the day, the small, if you can't afford $50 or $125 or $50 for 4 months, you shouldn't be in business.
So do any of your ads change position?
Premium positions are some rotating positions in the top. On the right and left side, we use Broad Street ads, and they're able to shuffle the ads for us, so you're not always at the top, not always at the bottom. Once in a while, we field a call, why is my ad always at the bottom? Well, it's not. Those calls are pretty rare.
So everybody shows up on every page view. It's
Yeah.
just that the position shuffles depending on, the
Page load, every page load, they shuffle.
Okay.
And we've got 4 different size ads?
More than that, I haven't counted them up for a while.
Okay.
Brian, can you
4,
tell us
5, 6.
about the way you go about setting your rates or how you generate revenue as a nonprofit?
So for the first 7 years of our site, we did not have advertising. We only added ads last year when we switched our CMS to actually have an ad package. And I hired a guy to do our sales work. Fortunately, he had 8 years of TV sales experience. We brought that over with him in his Rolodex. So we do flat rate monthly buys, anywhere from $100 to $300. And for our site this year, that will be $35,000 to $40,000. So underwriting is a very small part of our budget, 16 to 17% of our total budget. So most of our money is grants, individual donors. As a nonprofit, we have a different, revenue mix. I guess one of my observations about selling these ads and getting our advertisers involved is we're getting a lot of repeat customers over the past year, which is good for our first try in this. And they don't seem to care about the metrics. They don't ask us, they might ask up front, how many clicks are we going to get? And our sales guy's really good at saying, you know what, it's not, we're a niche nonprofit. You're not going to get the same volume here that you are on these other sites. But he encourages them to think about supporting community news and making the community better through supporting our product. So that seems to resonate really well with the advertisers that we've got on the site.
And I guess that would go back to the education of the whole thing, educating your customer and your reader about what your mission is in the community.
Now, if people have other questions that it may not be appropriate for everyone to ask about, I'll just tell you other things I can talk to you about outside of this. If you want to talk about Kickstarter, you want to talk about traditional fundraising campaigns, most of our money comes from an envelope that we send out, or a face-to-face meeting where we ask people to make a gift. If you want to talk about marketing through partners, our biggest marketing is through the daily newspaper, because we partner with them. So most of our news is published in the printed paper with our logo on it. So I can talk about how that works. Our approach is a little different.
but none, I mean, but very successful.
Brian, would you share the example of your Kickstarter, because it's project based, and I think that'd be interesting too, and beneficial for both the nonprofit and the for-profit website operators to hear as an example.
Yeah, so we've done 2 Kickstarter campaigns. The first one was something we needed done for us by an architect. We have a very controversial road project, and we wanted to get it modeled in Google Earth. So we hired an architect who does 3D modeling, and the Kickstarter campaign was, fund this project so we can model this controversial road, so the public actually knows what we're talking about as the decision makers are looking at this. That was successful. People loved that idea. We got the models published. The next year, this year,
How much was it?
we raised about $7,000. Now the downside of Kickstarter is you have to get it all or you don't get anything. So it's risky. And in that case, the downside would have been, well, we didn't do the models. We're still going to write the best news about this road project, so we weren't going to lose that. But we would have lost the value added bit. This year, we raised the stakes a little bit. We wanted to expand to cover public education. So we wanted to hire a reporter. That person was already on our staff as an intern. So what we sort of held out there was, we will make this a full-time position for you if we can raise $50,000. Now, we didn't raise that all through Kickstarter. We raised most of it via grants and gifts. But we had a balance we needed of about, I think it was about $15,000. And so we said, okay, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to try to raise the balance of your future job through Kickstarter. And it was very stressful for this employee and his spouse because they were looking to relocating to Charlottesville from Wisconsin. So what was interesting was we got a lot of out-of-state gifts from his friends and family who were trying to support, his new career. So that was sort of interesting. I don't know that I would do that again, put somebody's job and life in the balance in a Kickstarter campaign, but it was successful. You always have people approach you who really want to have it be successful and say, I can help you at the end of this. If you need a little extra money, let me know. And so it's nice to have donors like that and waiting in the wings, because a lot of the Kickstarter money is all raised in the last couple days. It's stressful. Yep.
Can I ask you what happens if that's for a year? What happens with that job connection?
That's a great question. So now it's on me to raise the next year of funding. And I'm not saying we won't do Kickstarter, we might. But Kickstarter works really well with some project specific. So more likely it would be major donors and grants. Now that we have this up and running, we're building up a lot of readership of the education content. So I'm very optimistic because there's a much larger audience that now I can do my traditional fundraising with. Before we were just covering growth and development, transportation, water supply, and that's a small audience. It's a much bigger audience for public education, so I think we're going to be successful fundraising.
Is some of the marketing for the Kickstarter on your site, or are you able to get publicity for it anywhere else?
It's hard for the other media companies to want to give publicity to us, to want to expand do more media, right? So sometimes the TV station will do a small piece, but really it's all us. And we're advertising primarily through our email list. So we have a pretty robust email platform that we've built up over the years.
Do you think it's more time and headache to be chasing after grants and Kickstarters and all that stuff all the time, or just to sell ads? What do you think? I mean, you haven't done it for profit, so I'm trying
well, having come here 4 years, though, I know what these guys are saying every year. Right? I mean, I'm in a whole different ballgame in a couple ways. So as a nonprofit from the beginning, we've always had big donors who want to make our site happen. So that's both good and bad.
Right.
It's good that I've had a salary and benefits and vacation for the past 8 years. So that's good job security year to year. Now it means right now I'm starting to panic a little bit because I got to raise some more money to clear out the end of the year, right? Any one grant, any one major gift doesn't come in, that's stressful.
Yeah.
Right?
And you are selling it.
But,
So
and
now
we
you've
are.
got both sets of
It's true.
But you're doing very well, so I'm not, but.
Yeah, I
commend you for
would,
taking on the
if I was starting over, I would do the nonprofit model again in our situation,
Yep.
which is a community that cares a lot about information, home of Thomas Jefferson. It's a community that cares a lot about its sense of place, so it wants to be better in the future. And we have a highly educated,
Right.
wealthy population that wants to be trusted with information to make good decisions.
It sounds like you have some, really well capitalized, consistent, reliable donors, and I don't think that's the case with a lot of people who want to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Something might come through for 1 year and then not the next year.
Right.
So my advertisers ask me monthly for stat reports, click-through rates and page views, and for your funders, what kind of metrics do they look for to see that their objectives are met and what their desired outcomes are? What are they asking for?
Well, of course, everyone wants to measure what's the impact of your journalism, right? And we all know that's hard to measure. I'm not sure that's been figured out. So we show them reach and engagement metrics. We're reaching more people. We're getting more donors every year. So we can show them that we're building this enterprise and the awareness of our brand. We hired the university to do scientific telephone surveys to measure if people know about us or not, track that.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because I know you've got the sponsored post, and you do, you have a few of those, and so just for the for-profit side, you move the needle on that.
Right. So in terms of revenue, our revenue is primarily advertising, but I've tried to diversify that so that we're offering different products and different things for different people. Sponsored content, obviously, content marketing is something that is hot right now and something we've been doing for a little while. And I offer several different varieties. I offer sponsored columns where the example of that is we have a real estate agent who writes about real estate. And a sponsored column is intended to be something that the business owner or someone from the business themselves actually writes with the goal of being informational instead of self-promotional. So, we work with them to make sure they're writing stuff that people want to read and comment on. And the end result is that they bring the real estate guy is the biggest story. You get a bunch of referrals from this and it's been very happy. Another variety of this is sponsored, what I would call sponsored articles. So this is content that we produce that then is sponsored by it's a banner announcing the sponsorship. So for instance, we just launched a weekly article on that profiles startup companies in Arlington. And we got a landlord or a property owner, Monday Properties, who owns a bunch of skyscrapers to sponsor it because they want more startup companies in their office buildings. The other thing we're doing is sponsored that we're just starting. I haven't sold it yet, so I can't tell you how it's done. It's sponsored posts. These are going to be more of the editorial type things where I've got a bunch of interest in businesses that want to write nice things about themselves and have us publish them. And I've resisted it up to now, but I recently posted a poll on the website saying, would you be okay if we did this? And 60% of people did not say no. 20% of them said maybe. So I'm going to start this and publish it in a very specific time in the morning. So it's not too intermixed with our editorial times. And then we have sponsored events, which is what I talked about this morning, where We have a weekly event listing that we call the Arlington Agenda, and we give businesses and organizations the opportunity to guarantee placement in this by buying it as a featured event on our event calendar.
And how can the reader tell the difference between one of your editorial stories versus a sponsored post column article or a featured event? How would we know the difference?
Well, a sponsor will have a sponsored by and a logo at the top of the story, and at the bottom of the story it will be labeled as sponsored article. And oftentimes we'll do a sort of editor's note. This article is sponsored by, like two sentences boilerplate, and it also gives us an opportunity to say, it's sort of like how PBS says this show is sponsored by, or is underrated by whoever, and then there's a sentence afterwards about what that company actually does. So that's what we do with the local.
What's the pricing on all four of those?
Sure. So the sponsored columns, the ones that are written by the advertisers, are in the informational. That's $200 for a weekly and $300 for bi-weekly.
So you charge the columnists this? They
publish it on our site, and we charge them to publish it.
So we charge $200 a week for one article per week?
So we offer two different frequencies. It's either weekly or bi-weekly. How often this is published? Okay. It's a regular feature. And it's important that this isn't just a one-time deal, that this is an ongoing thing to establish themselves, to not only provide readers with some consistent content, but to provide them with branding, because if they just do this one time, it's not going to really.
So that would be that'd be $1,200 a month if you're going to do it twice weekly. I'm sorry. So bi-weekly every other month. So $300 a month.
It's anywhere from, well, you can't really break it into months, but it is anywhere from. I'm not I'm sorry.
It'd be $5,200 a year for the reader. 300 times 26.
Yes. Actually, no, it'd be
Yeah, it'd be 3 times 26.
How do you, when you have someone like a real estate agent or something like that, because we do a lot of sponsored content, and I get a lot of inquiries from financial brokers and real estate agents who want to do something like that. We're actually about to start one with the hospital because that one makes more sense. They just want to get a health message out to the people. But when it's like a financial advisor, I'm like, how is this going to be relevant to Sheepshead Bay? Like, how do you keep it local, or do you not care? You're just happy that it's.
When I'm pitching this idea, I'm sort of pitching it to specifically to companies that I think are going to benefit from it, because what they'd be writing about is a specific interest in the community. For instance, we have a beer and wine column. I know that people in our community are big fans of beer and wine. That wasn't intended to be political, but it sounded. There seems to be an inordinate number of very beer heavy bars, but so that was one of them, and I try to target the businesses that aren't going to bore our readers to tears. And I actually forgot to finish your answer, so I'll give that real quick. The startup article that we write and sponsor, that we're actually charging $300 a week for that. But I sort of vary my pitch on that depending on the client's potential need for it. So I'd be charging this large property owner more than I might be charging the small pet store that's sponsoring our own competitive.
And for $300, you're producing a column yourself. You're doing the editorial, or are they submitting a signature?
We're producing it.
You're producing it. Okay. And when you work with, and I think that was your question, when you're being submitted content, first of all, do you sometimes have to pull teeth to get it? It's like, hey, your column's due today. Do you ever run into that?
Yeah.
And then, how much editing and how much hand-holding do you have to do to move away from we're the best, to actually get something that I want to actually read and learn something from.
Can I ask my question?
Sure.
Because he asked about relevance, and I'm going to ask you about the actual quality of what is submitted to you. I have tried sponsored posts in the past, and it took me more time to rewrite it than it would have if I had written it initially myself.
Yeah.
So how do you measure that? I mean, obviously you're charging quite a bit more than I did, but.
So I can tell you that there have been two failed attempts at sponsored columns that luckily we didn't start publishing. It's clear as we'd be a problem to start. And these were, there was one gentleman who just was a really bad writer, and I tried to work with him to fix his writing, and he was offended by the fact that I was fixing his writing. And I told him that I'm sorry, this isn't going to work. And I gave him his money back. And there was another situation that where they just never submitted the first column. And I kept reminding them, and at some point I said, I think maybe we can do this. But it's a very fine line to walk. Getting back to the question I received on it, yes, they're paying us to publish our content. Oftentimes, there are people who, for whom that potential clients for whom that is very backwards. They think we should publish it for free, just because why don't we want more stuff for people to read? And how I explain this is that we already have a site that gets lots of readers, and we're doing so without a real estate problem. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't need that's something that would that might be interesting to readers, but it's not a priority for us content-wise. And we're not willing to anytime we publish something written by a third party, we take some of our brand credibility and give it to them and publish it. So although it looks like they're this requires a business owner to take the time to write something, and that's a fairly big ask. But in the end, I point out that it's like one example I use is it's like opening your store in a shopping mall. If the shopping mall, pay you for you to open your store there, it'll bring in more people to the shopping mall. But really, you're in that shopping mall because that shopping mall is going to attract a whole bunch of people walking through it, and some of those people are going to go inside your store. The reason you publish on our site is because we have lots of readers built in. Those eyeballs are going to see your articles, and that's that.
When you charge somebody to write an article for them, do they not want you to write it exactly how they want you to write it? Or do you run into ethical issues when you're doing that?
I think it's important to pick and choose who you work with and to establish from the very beginning how this is going to work, and that you have the final say, that you as a publisher have the final say over the content. And if the client, you have to explain how your interests are aligned, why writing something from an authentic voice and not trying to be self-promotional actually will encourage more readership and more acceptance of the message. But you really need a client who understands that, and I think what I've learned is, make sure you talk this out and make sure you're on the same page so that you don't get that call saying, well, why did this article mention how great, our building is?
You don't want them to, they don't say, well, if I'm paying for it, can I see it before you publish it?
They have not asked for that yet. The two people we're working with, I think, they're, I'm working with a marketing manager of a large firm on this, and they trust us that we're going to be publishing quality content, and to send every article to them just be more time for them. So I think if you take that approach, don't worry about it, take care of everything, you might be able to defeat some people that want to micromanage.
And in many ways, it's a problem solved because it's one for them to write it. It's one more thing for them to do. I've run into that because we offer sponsored posts as well. But sometimes I use the word pulling teeth, and it is just like that for some clients. because they don't like to ride, or they think they're riding stupid, they think they can't connect, and you know, so I've actually just evolved a couple of agreements. We found it's easier to either find somebody that hired and then produce the content as a sponsored post, or move on.
How much
For
do you
us-
charge for sponsored posts?
We charge $2.29.
So for the
Is that per post? 229?
That is, I should clarify, that's per month, and that's 2 posts per month.
so for the ones that others write, it's 200 to 300. For the ones that we write, it's 600 to 300. Or I'm sorry, 60 to 60.
Is what?
It's between 60 and 300.
You're right.
But for the ones they write, it's
200.
And for your, and you're gonna charge them 300 to write it, in addition? The total investment would be $600.
So if they're writing it, then we're charging for publishing it, and that's $200 to $300 per post. And if we're writing it, we set the rate based on what we think our expenses are. So the kind of the week is a $60 a week thing, but that takes us 10 minutes to write.
Right.
The startup file takes a full-time quarter, at least half a day to write, and writes that program.
On our website,
audience do you get? I mean, you've got a fairly large site, fairly large audience. Do you have any sense of what the value of that is compared to if they bought display ads? I mean, are they getting a great deal by buying?
You know, I think they are getting a good deal. When the fit's right, I think it works very well. So the real estate guy has become very busy after starting this column. He just gets a lot of leads, especially from first-time home buyers, based on them reading this. You know, his columns generally get between 1,000 and 2,500 views every time they're published, along with a couple dozen comments. The beer wine column typically gets 500 to 2,000, a bunch of comments. Sometimes the columns don't resonate as well. And in those cases, sometimes I try to work with the columnists on finding topics that might be of greater interest than so there's a little bit of a coaching aspect.
So as time winds down, I'm going to share 3 things that we've done to sort of diversify our sort of revenue streams. We recently just held our first job fair, and so we charged $300 per table when we set up at one place, it was a Boys and Girls Club in our community, and we had Home Depot, we had Target, we had I forget what was there. And so we used our site to promote it. The municipal channels got a hold of it, and they promoted it, and through their workforce development, they were always looking to find jobs for people. It was a very successful event, and we think that if we held it later in the evening or afternoon, we would even have more traffic. So we are looking at doing that again. So events, we're going to build more events into our revenue plan for 14. Sponsored sections. So we have a traffic and transit section. It's huge. Traffic and transit. Traffic's horrible in Virginia, and every time we write a story about traffic, a lot of people read it. So there's a huge value, and I charge a premium. I charge $500 a month for a 300 by 250 banner ad to appear inside every post that it goes into our traffic and transit section. And they also get an even larger ad unit. It's a 1024 by 250 on the landing page for the traffic and transit section. And so it's very high visibility branding. And so we have sponsors for our county news, traffic and transit, crime, which is our most viewed section, So each of those different categories, health, we have sponsors for. And lastly is our philanthropic efforts, just being out in the community and being engaged with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club I mentioned before, and through Chamber of Commerce and what have you. Our issue was, and I'm the only full-time employee of Potomac Local. I work with a lot of dedicated freelancers and what have you. But I can only do so much, and what we've been able to do is partner with specific not-for-profits and sort of do a revenue sharing agreement where if they bring us a lead for advertising, we share 15% of that revenue with that choice not-for-profit. Generally, the people who work on the boards of these not-for-profits will go out back into their networks and talk up Potomac Local, talk about us being a resource, which has been particularly helpful because our daily newspaper that served our area for 150 years closed in December. And so there's a lot of people, what are you doing for news, what are you doing for news? So getting in and working with the nonprofits and their boards and having the boards go back out into their masses and talk about us has been very helpful. So it's
they get 15% of the sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's a win for us because that's revenue for us, it's revenue for the nonprofit as well, and from a word of mouth advertising angle, really works for us as well.
So the sponsored section is just displayed in that section?
Yes.
What's your pitch to you?
I'm going to cheat out
I was just going to say that in terms of the sponsored content, what we've done at News Hawk is we find someone who is going to be reliable, and send content on a regular basis, because that seems to be one of the key things when someone is writing for us. So we find someone who's a good writer and it's got relevant content, and we don't charge. We partner with them and say, look, what really works well is if someone is reading about whatever it is you're the expert on, be it healthcare, right? And then they see your ad, embedded in the article or near it, that then is a link to your website. So if they have more information, because they've been reading these articles about, how well, versed in this subject matter you are. So that's how we add in the buy in terms of, getting some revenue from them. Because then if they don't send the article to us, their ad is still there, so they still have a presence on our website, and we're still getting that revenue. And then we nudge them and say, look, can you, send us a new article? So that's kind of how we've done it. So then they have the two together, and it seems to really work well.
So I guess for us, part of the reason I sort of launched these products was I wanted an additional revenue stream to advertising, so that if we max out our ad inventory, there's still room for go to other revenues for other means. But I've actually, you're right that once I sell this, it's hard to sell them advertising in addition. They're also fine.
They're already like, oh, we're spending money. So I was just wondering if you had that approach. And then maxing out your ad inventory. Do a lot of you have problems with that?
We're not there yet.
You still there? Because when you were discussing
I can't wait to have that problem.
Good problem to have. Because we do flat pricing on News Hawk. So it's a weekly rate or a monthly rate, depending on the section. But then we do have up to 4 different ads rotating in each spot. So it's kind of a combination of CPM and flat rate. So if there's only 2 people running in that spot, then you're going to get more page views. But our goal is to sell all 4 spots. So that's how. And then we added a spot once we got to the point where that was problematic as well. So I was wondering if anyone else does that.
It's on a $10 CPM.
We don't sell CPM. We do flat weekly or monthly rates. But in each ad spot, and the ads rotate throughout the homepage and most of the local news sections, most of the website all has the same ad stack. But each time a page loads, a different ad is served up, so they're constantly changing.
How many ads do you have in each slot?
Up to 4.
We call it a share of voice model, and do also. We promote it as being a 25% share of voice or rotation option. But if somebody wants to buy 50% or somebody wants to buy 40%, we can sell them that, assuming the inventory is available. So it's essentially infinitely flexible in 1% increments, but what we promote to make it simple to promote.
Right.
Just
And then are you CPM or flat rate?
It's a flat rate that I promote, but in the back of my mind, I know what it is, CPM. And if anybody ever came to me and said, well, wait a second, I want a CPM rate, I can give it that. I can sell it on a CPM.
Wouldn't the CPM rate be like $50 per thousand?
No. I start from a $10 CPM at, back in my head. And for positions that are above the fold, and much less for positions that are below the fold. And then work back from that, and somebody buys it for a year, they're gonna get it substantially less than the $10 CPM. But
so you don't stick with the published rates then, it sounds like you're flexible.
We stick with published rates most of the time, but if somebody's buying it for a year, there's a discount for that year buy.
Right, and we have that as a published 52-week frequency discount. So that
What are
everyone,
your flat rates?
pardon me?
What are your flat prices?
Well, the top leaderboard on the top of our website is $600 a week. Flat rate.
What's your traffic on that?
We have,
How many impressions does that top thing?
how many impressions? 400,000 monthly. So we have a lot of impressions, which is why we charge 400,000 monthly impressions.
Okay.
So that somebody who's paying that $600 is getting 25% of those 400,000?
If there's up to 4 banners in the spot, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they could conceivably be paying a $60 CPM if they were.
That's if they're paying, most people don't pay open rate, most people are on a contract.
Oh, okay.
Most people are on a 52-week contract.
That's also if they do a CPM stick
Well,
That's the question. When I was selling banner ads in Dallas for Dallas Morning News, obviously we had 40 million banner impressions we could sell every month, right? And one of the problems that I had with it is I could go to the Google Content Display Network if I was an agency, which I've done now. I'm an agency now, and I can buy $100 or $1 CPM all day long and put it on national websites and geo-target it to certain zip codes. So that's where I'm coming from when I keep asking these questions. I mean, if they knew that they could be on MSNBC in Santa Barbara, for example, or they knew they could be on whatever the popular national websites are geo-targeted. That's your competition if they knew about it. So how do you reconcile that? I mean, you're selling, so you really have to make a very strong contextual argument as opposed to an audience argument.
I think that goes a little bit to what Doug and Dick were saying earlier today, though, is that actually that the ads are performing better on our sites than on theirs because the content is stronger, more as is often the case, and the advertising looks better than Google text ads often do.
Well, it's not just Google text ads.
Yeah, I know. And I also think when you go around and sell it, I mean, you're selling a little bit of a vision of a community, and it's not, just buy this TV station thing.
We run some Google units, but you can't buy premium content on my site. You can't buy premium position on my site.
Right.
Google.
Right.
You can only buy remnant at the bottom.
And if you're a smart local online publisher, you don't accept Google ads.
Well, you're not going to MSNBC for news about Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I mean, we're so hyper-local, and we really cover what's going on in our community. The audience that you're getting by being on our site can't be touched by all these national advertisers because it's so fragmented in terms of which Santa Barbara community members are going to these sites. So you may get a ton of page views, but you're reaching an irrelevant audience, would be my argument against,
Yeah, I'm tempted too, because you were the only person I've ever heard say this, and everybody comes up against that objection. When I asked you yesterday, when you were talking about the clicks.
Oh, the
it's not just
click-throughs?
about the
Oh,
clicks,
when
it's
people,
about
because I sold print for years, and with print, you couldn't measure how many people saw your ad or how many people walked in when they walked in with the coupon in their hand. So when people are always drilling us about, page views and click-throughs, and I said, well, look, when you're driving to Las Vegas and there's nothing to look at and you see all these billboards, you look at them, right? you jump out of the car and go like, write down the phone number, no, but you're seeing it, it's an impression, it's making an impression upon you, it's building a brand. That's what page view impressions do. Not everyone's gonna click on your ad. If you're a bank with Bank of Montecito, oh yeah, there they are, yeah, I love them, they're great. Unless it's like, register here, go to this event, click to vote, unless it's a call to action, click through isn't necessarily a value.
It goes back to the education part because
Right, that's what I said.
Google has ruined this sort of banner ad because they're telling business owners that if they don't click on it, it's not worth anything.
And
that's the
completely
furthest from
false.
the truth. I mean, it's completely false.
If you have an advertiser that has any amount of ego wrapped up in their own website, I mean, this is certainly true in our market. We can send them 50 people a month to visit their website. That's 50 people they wouldn't get otherwise, and they're very happy. And typically, we send 80 to 200 people a month to a website. One of our biggest advertisers, I was just looking at his site, his stats for last month, he got 480 clicks. He's not going to get the phone to ring 480 times, but that's 480 times that his site was engaged with. The click-through rate, 0.07. I mean, it sounds anemic, but in a small town, get 400 people to visit this website in a month is huge.
But you've actually built in through your advertising, people can get a flavor and a sense for what is offered in the town, in addition to reading your ad.
Yeah, that was kind of and that's why we put everything on the homepage, just to give that. I wanted it to be like picking up the local penny saver.
How we changed my whole view on ads when I first met him, because he said, I was like, well, who really wants to see all these ads on the side? He's like, well, it's local ads, it's content, it's relevant stuff, people want to see that.
And that's
To me, it's contextual. The same way that a Google ad is, it's contextual.
I had this experience where we sold a program when I was in a newspaper a little bit before this, and we had a program where we saw these ads, and we were able to judge them all at one time. And we had one that had the highest click-through rate and one that had the lowest click-through rate. We were looking at which one. Well, the one with the highest click-through rate came in from an agency. It was for a big real estate developer. Beautiful ad, but you couldn't tell what it was actually doing. People would click on it just to see the picture of the house. All right? So that got the highest click-through rate. The one that got the lowest click-through rate was for a local casino, which was happy hour, 2 for $1 or something like that. And come on in. That got the lowest click-through rate. But that ad was far more effective, certainly sold a lot more than the other one. And so I always tell that when somebody says, well, if I'm not getting clicks, it's not worth anything. It depends on what you're putting in the ad. I mean, if you're saying everything you need to say in the ad, nobody needs to click on it.
And then take that success story and put it in media and share it out in your area.
Well, one thing I tell when I design ads, I mean, I try not to design our web ads like a print ad. I don't like address, phone number, and the URL.
Yeah.
When people put their URL in their ad, I'm like, I'm sorry, just.
Actually, there's some studies that show the URL, putting the URL in the ad, there's some studies for this, increases click-through and it increases retention. I forget what the exact number is now, but there's a huge correlation to people going back to Google later and looking for that website.
I'd like to do that study, because to me it
It's been
doesn't
a few
make
years.
sense.
They'll knowing that there's a URL for the site makes them more likely to go try to find it in Google.
Well, I mean, if you say, you put the information, a great compelling visual, and then for more information, click here. To register, click here. Learn more, click here. So like there is that call to action to click on it. And to me, that just makes more sense than putting print ads online and having address, phone number, URL, all this little teeny type that you can't read anyway. Because all of that's on the
Teeny
website.
type is the key to making it look like a local ad.
Pardon me?
I said teeny type is key to making it look like a local ad.
And on that note, folks, thank you so much for being with us. The Virginia delegation says thank you for the local field. So,
We try to upscale it.
we're around the questions.
I mean, you'll see ads on our site that still have the URL on the phone number. But it's when they make,
You know what
when
makes
they cram so much in and it's not clear. I just